she'll listen closely. When darkness wraps the world and dreams begin to stir, you've arrived at the right place. Welcome to Between Dreams and Shadows, the sanctuary of stories that live between sleep and the unknown. Here, every tale is more than a story. It's a portal to hidden worlds, forgotten secrets, whispers from beyond, and shadows that speak as your eyes begin to close. If you're drawn to mysteries, haunting legends, and stories that send shivers down your spine, this channel is your new nighttime ritual. Before we begin, I invite you to become part of this growing nightbound community. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale. New stories drop regularly, always under the veil of night. Like this video if you enjoy that chill before sleep. It helps this channel grow and lets me bring you deeper, darker stories. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a strange dream or felt something watching in the dark? Your experience might inspire the next tale now. Take a deep breath, turn off the lights, leave the world behind, and get ready to drift between dreams and shadows. Setting the atmosphere, it always begins the same way. There's the sound of wind, though I know the windows are shut. The curtains ripple gently, like someone has just passed by them, unseen. I lie there, paralyzed not from fear, but from the weight of something unseen pressing softly against the air itself. The clock ticks louder than usual, its rhythm sinking deeper into my ears, as if it's counting down to something I'm not prepared for. My name is Daniel, and I live alone. Or at least I used to believe I did. It's not an old house, nothing typically eerie about it. 2 stories, quiet neighborhood, sparse furniture, nothing that screams haunted or strange. But it's what you don't see that stays with you. What settles in the corners just out of your peripheral vision? What breathes quietly when you're almost asleep? The dream started last fall, right after my sister's funeral. She passed in her sleep peaceful, they said, but her eyes were open when they found her, wide, focused on something that wasn't there anymore. I remember the first night vividly. The dream wasn't terrifying, not in the way you'd expect. I was standing in my kitchen at night, barefoot, the cold tiles beneath me, damp with something I couldn't see. The refrigerator light was on, casting a faint glow across the counters, and she was there, at the edge of the hallway. A woman, pale, long black hair that stuck to her cheeks as if she'd just climbed out of water. She didn't move, she just looked at me. Not with menace but with familiarity, as if she knew me. And then, I woke up, heart pounding, palms damp. I chalked it up to grief, maybe some unconscious manifestation of loss. But the dreams returned, night after night. She would always appear somewhere slightly different, in the bathroom mirror, behind the door, outside the window, still, watching over time. I began to dread sleep not because of terror, but because of the unsettling calm that surrounded her, like she was waiting for something. One evening, I noticed something strange in the mirror. A faint line on my shoulder, a mark, like a scratch or burn that hadn't been there the day before. I didn't remember injuring myself, but I remembered the dream. She had reached toward me. That was the first time she touched me. Now, I light a candle before bed. Not for light, but for company. The flame dances subtly, casting shadows that sometimes linger a little too long in one place. I tell myself it's all in my head, but the air is always colder when she's near, and I swear I can hear her breathing, just behind me as I write this, just close enough to touch. The first signs of disturbancy line on my shoulder didn't fade. If anything, it deepened like a bruise that had learned to stay. It wasn't painful, but it itched like a memory, trying to surface through skin. Over the next few nights, more marks began to appear. They weren't scratches or cuts exactly, just impressions. Faint, like the press of fingers that never quite let go. I stopped trying to explain them to myself. The logical part of my mind, what little remained, was fading beneath a fog of fatigue and something else I couldn't name. A quiet terror that refused to scream. the woman, she was no longer content to remain at the periphery of my dreams. She had begun to move, slowly. First, she turned her head. Then, her eyes followed me, and one night, she whispered. I couldn't understand what she said, not fully. It sounded like my name, but broken, like it had been chewed on and spit out by something no longer used to speaking. The real disturbances began subtly. It started with the lights. Flickers I dismissed as faulty wiring, but the bulbs were new, and the electrician found nothing wrong. Then it was the kitchen drawers, always just slightly ajar in the morning, even though I remembered closing them the night before. I'd hear the soft slide of wood against wood in the dead of night, and tell myself it was the house settling. But a newer house doesn't settle this often, and the shadows, they began to behave strangely. I'd catch them where they shouldn't be, a silhouette on the wall, even though no one was standing in the room. Movement at the edge of the hallway, but when I turned, nothing was there. The scariest part wasn't seeing them, it was that they never moved when I was looking. They only shifted when my back was turned. The woman followed me into waking life. I saw her just once while I was brushing my teeth. Her reflection was in the mirror, standing behind me. Not quite visible, but present. Her shape flickered like static, and I could feel her breath icy and damp on the nape of my neck. I spun around, and the bathroom was empty, but the mirror was fogged where she had stood. A single streak ran down the glass, like a finger had traced it. Downward each night, the dreams grew more vivid, and each morning, I awoke more exhausted, as if I hadn't slept at all. My world felt thinner, the walls less solid. The line between dreaming and waking blurred. I began to question everything. Had the dreams always been dreams, or was I simply remembering what I refused to see while awake? When I told a friend about it just lightly, vaguely, he laughed nervously and said, "You've been alone too long." I agreed, but something in my voice didn't believe it, because being alone had never felt like this. Not like being watched, from the inside out. The sound that shouldn't exist, it began in the deepest part of the night, the hour where even the air seems hesitant to move. At first, I thought it was static, a faint hum, like an old TV left on in another room. But every time I searched for the source, the sound vanished, only to return as soon as I stopped looking. It wasn't coming from any device. It was just there, suspended in the silence, like a memory no one else could hear. Then came the whispering. It didn't sound like speech at first, more like wind dragging across broken glass. But gradually, the syllables began to take shape, distorted and wet, as though being spoken from beneath water. I would lie there, still, my body rigid, with the kind of fear that doesn't come from being threatened, but from being known, like something was speaking directly to the part of me I couldn't hide. The first clear word I heard was my name, not shouted, not spoken, breathed. Danielle. It wasn't just that she said my name, it was how she said it, as if savoring it, stretching it out, not for my benefit, but for hers, like tasting something familiar, something remembered. Some nights, it came from inside the walls. Other nights, from directly beside my bed. I tried recording it. I set up my phone to capture any sound while I slept. The first few nights yielded nothing but the gentle creaks of the house. But on the fourth night, I caught something barely audible, like a thread of sound beneath silence. I played the clip over and over, headphones in, volume maxed, and just before the file ended, I heard it, a whisper that wasn't mine. Come back. I didn't know what that meant. Come back where? I'd never gone anywhere, at least. Not that I remembered. I started sleeping with the lights on, but that made no difference. The sound didn't need darkness to exist. It wanted me to hear it, and worse, it wanted me to answer. I began hearing it during the day too. Once while I was on a work call, the voice layered itself beneath the conversation, just for a moment. I froze mid-sentence as my colleague asked if everything was okay. I lied, of course. What else could I say? Yes, just thought I heard something. You look pale, she said. Are you sleeping? Not really. The worst came on a Wednesday. I remember because I hadn't left the house in 3 days. I was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to read anything, to distract myself, when I heard it again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a lullaby, soft, crooked, hummed through cracked lips. A child's melody but off-key, fragmented, like it had forgotten its own tune halfway through, and decided to continue anyway. The sound came from the hallway, from the dark at the top of the stairs. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, listening. The song repeated itself 3 times, then stopped. Silence fell again, but it wasn't comforting. It was expectant, as though something was watching to see what I would do next. I stayed at the table until morning. I didn't sleep. I didn't move, and I realized something then. The sound wasn't coming from outside of me anymore. It was inside, and it knew. I could hear it. The presence without a face. I stopped trusting reflections. Mirrors no longer echoed reality. They hinted at something else, something delayed, slightly off. I'd catch a glimpse of myself moving when I knew I was perfectly still, just out of sync enough to feel like a different person. Or perhaps something, pretending to be one. The woman from my dreams no longer needed night to visit me. It was on a rain-soaked Thursday that I first felt her without seeing her. I had just stepped out of the shower, the mirror still fogged over, my skin wrapped in steam. I turned to grab a towel and paused. There was pressure in the room. Not temperature, not sound. Pressure, like the moment before thunder breaks, when the world inhales and holds its breath. The fog on the mirror began to clear slowly, but not from the edges, from the center, as if something was breathing against the glass. My heart slammed against my chest, and without thinking, I wiped it with my hand. There was no reflection, just the empty bathroom behind me, and yet, I wasn't alone. The door creaked open behind me. I hadn't touched it. I turned, slowly, body stiff, every hair on my arms standing up. No one, but the towel rack swayed slightly, like someone had brushed past it, and the floor, still wet, showed a faint print. Barefoot, too small to be mine. From that day forward, small things changed. Items moved from their places. Keys would vanish, only to be found in odd places, like the freezer or the medicine cabinet. My front door would unlock itself. Once, I returned from a short walk to find every cupboard in the kitchen wide open, their contents untouched, but carefully facing outward as though they were watching for my return. But it was the sensation that disturbed me most, that constant awareness of not being alone, of being observed, not like prey, but like a possession, as though something was remembering me, claiming me. Sometimes, when I lay in bed, I feel a slight dip beside me, the mattress giving way under a weight that isn't there. There's never a sound, never a whisper, just presence. She doesn't always appear, but when she does, it's never with a face. That's the part that stays with me. She has hair, long and black, dripping like it's still wet. Her body is always the same, thin, draped in something that might once have been white. But her face, it's always obscured, by shadows, by fog, by sheer absence. And yet, somehow, I know she's looking at me. Not because I can see her eyes, but because I can feel them inside my head. She's not trying to scare me. That would be easier to bear. She's trying to get closer. Every visit, she lingers longer. Every dream, she reaches further. And now, even when I'm awake, I sometimes hear the faint crackle of air shifting as though space itself is bending to let her in. I once tried speaking to her. "Who are you?" No response, but when I looked at my phone later that night, I found a voice memo I hadn't recorded. Its file name was a date, my sister's birthday. I played it once. The only sound was breathing. My breathing, and hers, perfectly synchronized. The unspoken warnings, the messages began as patterns. They were still too subtle for most to notice, but when you're living in fear, you begin to see things others wouldn't. You have to. It's how you survive, top first. It was the light. My bedroom lamp began flickering in threes. 3 short bursts, a pause, then 3 again. At first I thought it was coincidence, a wiring issue, but when I swapped the bulb and moved it to a different outlet, the pattern remained. Then the knocks started, not loud, not threatening, just soft taps at 3:17 a.m. always, 3 in a row. Then nothing. I tried recording them, but each time, the file would corrupt, not with noise, with silence, as if something was erasing the sound, not masking it. My dreams changed too. They became structured, purposeful, no longer random visitations from a faceless woman, but full environments that repeated themselves with precision. The same hallway, the same flickering lights, the same voice humming that broken lullaby. I began keeping a journal, not to make sense of it, there was no sense left, but to prove to myself that I was still experiencing time in a linear way, that the days were real, that I was real. One night I found the journal moved, not misplaced. Altered. My entry from the night before had been crossed out in thick red pen I didn't own. In its place, 3 words had been written in block letters: do not follow. The next night, I dreamed of my sister. She was in a place that looked like my house, but wrong. The walls pulsed faintly, breathing like lungs. The light was red, not from bulbs, but from something deeper, like the glow from behind closed eyelids. She stood at the end of the hallway, pale and expressionless, her mouth slightly open. I ran to her, but she didn't move. She just stared. As the woman stepped out of the shadows behind her, that same faceless form, that same soaked hair. But this time, she reached for my sister, and I couldn't move. I tried to scream, but my throat refused. I woke up with my fingers dug into my palms so hard I'd drawn blood. The sheets were twisted, the candle had burned itself out, and there were scratches on the inside of my bedroom door. From the inside, I didn't make them. The warnings weren't just in dreams anymore. They followed me into every waking hour. My phone would ring once, then stop. Caller ID, always blank. Emails would arrive, blank, timestamped at 3:17 a.m. A single subject line, remember. But remember what? The woman wasn't just a haunting. She wasn't even a ghost. She was a reminder of something I had forgotten, or something I had chosen to forget. I began to suspect that this wasn't the first time I had seen her, that maybe she had always been there, watching, waiting, reaching, not to hurt me, but to warn me. From what? I still didn't know, and yet, deep down, I sensed something. This wasn't a haunting, it was a message, a whispered plea from the dark. Don't look back, don't follow, don't remember, because if I did, she might no longer need to visit me in dreams. She might finally come through. The moment of truth, I began to test the boundary, not by choice, not because I wanted to confront her, but because pretending nothing was happening became impossible. The house had turned into a labyrinth of quiet dread, every hallway a narrowing tunnel, every room a waiting silence. I wasn't living anymore. I was hiding. One night, I sat at the edge of my bed, the air heavy, a thin tremor in my hands. It was just after 3 a.m., the hour she always felt closest. My eyes fixed on the hallway beyond my door, the space humming with a low, unseen tension. I left the door open, just slightly, just enough. This time, I wanted to see her come. Maybe I thought I could catch her, prove she wasn't real. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted her to. At 3:17 a.m., exactly, the hallway light flickered 3 times. Then the whisper came, not a voice, but a breathless exhale from the dark. I stood, slowly, each step toward the door felt like walking into the deep end of a pool. Reality thickened around me. The air bent, warped, shadows lengthened. The walls pulsed, almost imperceptibly, like they were holding in a scream. The hallway had never seemed so long. Halfway down, the temperature dropped. I turned the corner and froze. She was there, not in a dream, not through a mirror. In the flesh, if you could call it that. She stood at the end of the hallway, motionless, soaked. Her arms dangled unnaturally at her sides, her fingers too long, slightly curled, her head tilted, as if studying me. Still, no face, just void, a shifting blankness. And yet, I felt her expression, not anger, not malice, recognition. She raised one hand slowly, purposefully, and pointed to the attic. I had forgotten the attic even existed. I don't remember walking, only the sound of the stairs creaking under my weight. The string for the attic door hung perfectly still until I reached for it. Then, it swayed slightly, like something had just let it go. I pulled. The door opened with a long groan. The air that poured down wasn't dusty or stale. It was wet, cold, and smelled like river water and ash. The latter groaned beneath me as I climbed. My heart beat so loud it muffled everything else. And then, silence. The attic wasn't what I expected. It was empty, clean even. Except for one thing. In the center of the floor sat a small wooden box, old locked. The kind with no keyhole, a sliding mechanism worn from time and use. I knelt in front of it. My hands trembled as I touched the lid. The moment I moved, it just an inch, the silence shattered. I was no longer in the attic. I was back in the dream, only this time, it wasn't a dream. The hallway returned the same one I'd seen 100 times in sleep. Red-lit, pulsing, too long to be in any real house. My sister was there again, but this time she looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. She mouthed something. Don't open it. Too late. Behind me, I heard the soft creak of floorboards bending. The woman was here. I turned, and she was closer than she'd ever been. Close enough for her hand to reach for mine. Close enough for the void of her face to breathe a single word into my ear. Now you remember. And then I woke up. On the attic. Floor. Box unopened. But my hand still rested on the lid. The markings on my arm were deeper now. More defined. And this time, they weren't scratches or bruises. They were symbols. The kind you don't remember learning, but that feel like they've always been there. The inevitability of darkness. There's a moment when you realize you've passed the point of no return. When every breath you take confirms not life, but intrusion. Something has crossed over into you, through you, and it no longer intends to leave. That's where I live now. Not in fear, but in resignation. Fear implies you still believe escape is possible. It began the morning after the attic. I couldn't remember how I got to my bedroom, but my door was locked from the inside. My phone dead, my sheets soaked with moisture that reeked of river stones and rot. The box from the attic was gone, but I knew it hadn't left. It had simply moved to where I couldn't reach it. Or maybe, where I couldn't close it again. The symbols on my arm had darkened, almost like they were healing in reverse, growing bolder instead of fading. I tried to scrub them off. Hot water, alcohol, even scratching them raw. They didn't hurt. They didn't even bleed. They just stayed, etched, watching. I tried calling my sister. Her number rang once, then went to voicemail. Then again, then again. On the fourth try, someone picked up, but they didn't speak. Only the breathing, that same synchronized rhythm, hers and mine. I smashed the phone, but it didn't matter. I could feel her watching me now, not from behind corners, but from inside reflections. Windows, water, polished, silver, any surface that could mimic depth. I stopped looking. I covered mirrors, avoided screens, but her image still bled through, her silhouette lingering just behind mine, like a parasite trying to wear me from the inside. I stopped sleeping, not out of choice, but because she didn't need me to dream anymore. She was already here, and the more I remembered, the more real she became. Because yes, I had seen her before. Years ago, when I was 12. My sister and I snuck out to explore an old storm tunnel beneath our neighborhood. Local kids said it was haunted dove. Of course they did. But we were bored, brave, stupid. We found something inside, a dry space, buried deep under the concrete, and the box, smaller back then, unopened, dusty, wrapped in old cloth. We laughed. She dared me to touch it. I did. Just once. Then the voice came, a single word. Mine. We ran, but something followed. Not out of the tunnel. Into us. We forgot it. Or convinced ourselves we had. But the woman didn't forget. She waited. And now, she's done waiting. Last night I saw my sister again, not in a dream, in the mirror, behind me, standing next to the woman. Her face was pale, distant, mouth stitched with silence. She mouthed something again. Not, don't open it this time, but it's too late. The box is open. The link is complete. The markings aren't symbols. They're names. Mine, my sister's, others. This isn't a haunting. It's a claiming. And I am no longer being followed. I am being inhabited. I hear her now, not just in dreams, not just in mirrors. She whispers behind my thoughts, finishing my sentences, breathing through my lungs. The worst part? It doesn't scare me anymore. It feels natural. The fear that stays, it's strange what becomes familiar. The scent of damp stone. The soft creak of wood that no longer supports weight. The way shadows fold in places light never touched before. But most of all, the presence. She no longer announces herself. She no longer needs to. She is part of the room now, part of the air, and part of me. I no longer sleep. Not because I'm afraid, but because I can't tell the difference anymore. Between waking and dreaming. Between memory and imagination. Between my thoughts and hers. The line is gone. I speak less. I eat less. The mirrors have all been taken down. My phone hasn't worked in weeks. There are no more knocks. No more whispers. But I still hear them, just beneath the silence. I look at the markings now, as intrusions, but as inheritance. They are no longer black. They are red. Not from ink or blood, but something deeper, something alive. They change. When I'm not looking, they shape themselves around my mood. When I'm calm, they pulse like embers. When I'm anxious, they throb like open wounds. I think they're learning me. I tried leaving the house once, just once. The moment I stepped outside, the world blurred. People moved like insects in syrup, their faces melting into one another. Buildings tilted. The sky looked too close. The air tasted of metal. She doesn't let me leave anymore. Not physically, not mentally. And I understand why. Because I invited her in. That day in the storm tunnel when I touched the box. When I ignored the warning, I allowed her a space to enter. And she's been waiting all this time for me to remember. For me to awaken her. Not with ritual, but with recognition. She is not a ghost. Not a demon. Not a figment of grief or trauma. She is memory, a forgotten thing that refuses to stay buried, a reflection that grows stronger the longer. You deny it. She was never haunting me. She was becoming me. And now, I watch her from the inside. I see through her eyes. Her history unfolds in layers, faces she's worn, homes she's taken, names she's replaced. A cycle that began long before me, and will continue long after. She is an echo that only grows louder in silence, a wound that heals inward. And now, I understand the real horror. It's not the dream. It's waking up and realizing you never left. It's knowing that the scars she left aren't on your skin. They're on your soul, and they never fade. She doesn't need to chase anymore, because now, she's home. Could you sleep after hearing this? What do you think really happened? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and, if you dare, explore another tale before bed. The darkness is always listening.